We'll call to order the Mobile Source Committee meeting for September 20th, 2019. I think we have a quorum. We do have a quorum.
Yes.
Would the clerk call the roll for a quorum?
Mayor Mitchell is absent today. Supervisor Bartlett?
Here.
Mayor Mitchell? Mayor Mitchell?
Mayor Mitchell told me she'd be a little late, but she's coming.
Supervisor Perez? Supervisor Rutherford?
Present.
Dr. Burke?
Yes.
We have four?
Do we have a quorum?
We have four?
Yes.
Okay. Then we'll start with the update.
Dr. Burke, it's Supervisor Bartlett. Could you move that glass of iced tea? Because that's all we can see on our screen.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
There's a lot of people who thinks that's a improvement. Okay, let's start with the update on development of the facilities-based mobile source measures in the 2016 AQMP. Ms. Reese?
Yes, good morning, Dr. Burke, members of the committee. I'm going to give an update as to where we are on our facility-based mobile source measures that we've been working on now since May of 2018. So just a quick overview of this, what the board directed us to do. We're working on 5 different facility-based measures on airports, ports, new and redevelopment, warehouses, and rail yards. And so on airports and ports, we were directed to pursue a memorandum of understanding. For the ports, it was to build on the good work that the ports have done on their clean air action plans. With airports, to follow a similar vein. In that case, the airports were to develop clean air action plans of their own, and then we would pursue MOUs to implement specific actions from those. With new and redevelopments, we were directed to continue to work with stakeholders and explore different regulatory concepts, and then also take a look at what preliminary costs and benefits would be of those rule concepts before then coming back with a recommendation. And then on warehouses, we were asked to pursue regulatory concepts. So we're looking at developing an indirect source rule for warehouses, at the same time to conduct a study on economic impacts that would then inform whatever rule concept we develop. And then on rail yards, we were also asked to pursue rulemaking. So we're developing an indirect source rule on that as well. So where we are in the airports, we've been working with the airports. They've been very cooperative, developing what they call their air quality improvement plans, or AQIPs. And so the AQIPs have different elements where they're pursuing measures to get emission reductions. These are focused on the non-aircraft emission reductions. So we understand that even though aircraft are the #1 source of emissions from the airports, for a variety of reasons, we don't really have a regulatory authority, or it's difficult for us to control those emissions. So we're working with them to develop those plans, and then specific measures from those plans will then be incorporated into a memorandum of understanding. So they've been working through that. Right now, we've had several working group meetings on the airport MOUs, so folks are aware of what we're working on with that. And I think it's proceeding well. Right now, we still have the
Sarah?
AQIPs. Yes.
Sarah, can you go back to the last slide?
Sure.
So the 4 airports below LAX probably equal 1/20th of the emissions of LAX.
They are a lot
So for
smaller.
them to be portrayed as equal in the size of the box is a little misleading. So where are we with LAX, since it's the only real player on that board?
Yeah, so LAX, they already had developed an air quality improvement plan, so they already have a lot of measures out there to reduce emissions at LAX. So, we're working with them to get or incorporate the elements of their air quality improvement plan into an MOU. But they have probably, I would imagine, I would say the most aggressive plan compared to the other airports, mostly because they are bigger, to your point, and so they have a lot more opportunity to make those reductions.
But are we in the progress? I mean, since they're the Goliath, so, if we don't have something specific with them, the rest of it is not really relevant.
LAX is definitely leading the pack, and we're close to having an MOU together. My next slide addresses sort of where we are with the schedule on that. But MOU is LAX is definitely leading the pack on that.
Okay. So do you have a time frame on their agreement?
Sure. So if I can go to the next slide, let me bring the slides up. We can talk about the schedule a bit. So we were seeking to release our preliminary draft staff reports with the draft AQIPs and MOUs for all of the airports. Right now, those AQIPs are still in draft form, so we're working with the airports on that, but we will be releasing them soon. We do have a public consultation meeting scheduled on the 10th of October. Continuing with our working group meetings, and then we are planning to bring this back to the board for consideration in December of this year. So we'll be having this finalized by the end of this year, and then submitted to CARB and EPA, where we can proceed then with getting SIP credits for those emission reductions.
But there were 5 airports on there, weren't there?
There are 5 airports, yes. LAX is definitely the largest by far, but there are 5 airports that we're considering.
But on October 15th, there's 4 airports.
Fourth working group.
No, that's the first working group meeting. Yeah.
Fourth meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So that is where we are on the airports. With no further questions, I will move on to the ports. So again, we've been working with the ports in looking at different elements of their Clean Air Action Plan and incorporating that into a memorandum of understanding. We've also had a technical working group process that we've been proceeding with to effectively develop the methodologies that we'll use to quantify emissions and the emission reductions that we're getting out of the different measures. We've had several working group meetings already with the on that MOU, and then we have another meeting scheduled in October to discuss that. So specific CAP measures that we're looking at, the Clean Trucks program is really the cornerstone of the port's Clean Air Action Plan. That's the one that's going to get the most emission reductions, while ocean-going vessels are the largest source of emissions from the ports. Again, for a variety of reasons, it's very difficult for us to control those emissions. So the real focus is on the Clean Trucks. The ports are working on developing a clean truck program that is being informed by a truck rate study that they're working on right now to figure out what an appropriate rate would be to charge for trucks that also doesn't have any impacts on cargo diversion or other concerns. So that truck rate study was supposed to have been released in June of this year. Ports ran into a little bit of trouble with that, so that's being delayed a bit. And so that's subsequently delaying our MOU adoption, because we really need to figure out what that truck rate is going to be before we can proceed with the MOU. So, and then I think our executive officer has been having discussions with the executives at the ports, and I think you might want to say a few words at this point.
Yeah, but don't all the way, you know what I mean? Not all the way, because then I get lumped in.
Excuse me, Supervisor Perez, can you go ahead and put yourself on mute, please?
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you, Supervisor Perez. So I just wanted to add, as Sarah had said, we've been having monthly phone calls at the executive officer level between Long Beach, Los Angeles, and ourselves. And as Sarah noted, the truck rate study was to have been completed in June. It's been delayed. They want to be able to take their study, which apparently is in draft form at this point, to their board By doing so, they would do so in November. It's delayed hours, but in discussions with the executive directors on Wednesday, I'm optimistic that I think we have a way forward. I don't want to say too much other than the fact that right now we're evaluating where they would be and what it would actually mean for us in terms of emissions. But we will be able to then come back in December with where we are on that. But I am optimistic, and I just wanted to let the board understand that. And I'll turn it back to you, Sarah.
Great. Pull the slides back up. So in terms of schedule, so we had initially planned that we were going to be adopting an MOU by the end of the year. Because of the delay in the truck rate study, that's being delayed a bit, but we expect that we'll be bringing the MOU back to the board in early 2020 for consideration. We do have a draft MOU language already developed. It's just a matter of being able to fill in some of the specifics based on the results of the study. On new development and redevelopment, this action was taking a bit of a slower path. So this is, when the board at the time directed us to continue to look at regulatory concepts, but also express concerns that there would be impacts on affordable housing, there might be some impacts on real estate prices, and then other economic impacts. And so we were directed to continue with our working group process. So continue to meet with industry representatives and other stakeholders, and then also to look at a study on some of the economic impacts. And so for that, we've prepared a request for proposal, and we're looking at a study mostly evaluating the impacts associated with construction costs for different rule concepts. And so this RFP is, we've developed this at this point, it's going out for 60 days. And so we will be coming back to our working group to present the results when we get that. But then we'll continue to work with our working group to talk about different concepts and flesh that out. And then one concept we are looking at for this particular facility-based measure is this idea of a CEQA air quality mitigation fund and programs. And I think I've mentioned this in a previous update, where this is an idea of where we can focus on ozone precursors, because we're focused on getting ozone emission reductions from this. But really looking at different projects that could be associated with new development and redevelopment that could then mitigate air quality impacts associated with those projects. We're still figuring out what this concept would look like. It's very early, but it is something that we continue to work with our working group. On warehouse, we've been directed to do indirect source rule, and so we've had 3 working group meetings since the last time that I talked to you guys. And I wanted to stress here that there is a lot of different regulations and actions going on in this area. So CARB is very active. There's some movement potentially at the federal side on trucks and getting cleaner truck standards. We really see the ISR for warehouses as one piece of the puzzle to be able to integrate a bunch of actions that are going on at the local and the federal level that can provide emission reductions. But it's a way to sort of facilitate all of that and make sure that we're able to get emission reductions from the trucks associated with the warehouses. And some examples of where you've been able to pull to, or a bunch of different policies have come together to be able to get rapid deployment of cleaner technologies. And we look at the example in California and the share of light-duty plug-in vehicle sales. We lead the nation. It's growing very rapidly. A better example is probably looking at what's happening in China right now, in Shenzhen, with a massive deployment of zero-emission vehicles. But it's really about having these different policies coming together to be able to drive that deployment of new technology. We spent a lot of time thinking about different concepts of what a warehouse ISR could look like. We've come up with one now, what we're calling our Warehouse Actions and Investments to Reduce Emissions, or our WARE program. This is a program that basically offers a menu of actions or investments for facility owners and operators to be able to implement. So it's a little bit like a LEED system, if you're familiar with that, for buildings, where there's a menu of approaches, and then buildings can be certified to certain standards for energy efficiency and sustainability. So on that menu, there'll be a number of different actions. Each of those actions would have a specific amount of points. And facility operators will be then required to earn a certain number of points every year. So, and I'll stress on this is that this is still very draft and preliminary. We just had a working group yesterday to talk about some of the details of this, but we're definitely still working this through and very open to inputs. But each of the points that they would earn, right now we're looking that would be based on the number of truck trips to those particular facilities. And that's because with the warehouses, you look at the bulk of the emissions, it's really all about the truck emissions. So the points would then be based on metrics that we would establish for each menu item. And then there'd be factors that we would include in terms of determining what those point values would be. We haven't gone through this exercise yet. Again, it's very preliminary, so there's still a lot of work ahead to flesh all of this out. But we are thinking that some of these action items might be weighted heavier if a facility is near a sensitive receptor. So for example, if a facility is right next to a school, there could be more points associated with that facility switching to zero emission yard trucks than a facility that's maybe in the middle of nowhere or not close to any sensitive receptors. So in terms of our timing, we're looking at maybe potentially a phase-in of this program. So starting with the larger warehouses and then phasing in for ones that are smaller. We were also considering a program where the number of points that the facility operators need to earn would increase over time. But again, all of these details are still to be worked out and determined. So we've had some preliminary feedback on this concept. As you can imagine, everybody's very eager to see the details. It's easy to talk about concepts. It's difficult to get into the weeds when you talk about how things are actually going to work. We have had some tentative support from our community stakeholders on this rule concept. Again, our industry stakeholders want to see the details, want to understand how incentives are going to play in this and how the SIP credit aspect will work of this rule. We still have, as I mentioned, a lot of work to iron out the details of this, and so we are recommending that we would bring this proposed rule to the board for consideration in May of 2020. So that gives us a little time to continue to work with our stakeholders and to develop these concepts.
Hi, it's Supervisor Bartlett. I have some questions
Sure.
before we move on to the next item. So I know we were still in preliminary stage here, and you're going to get something more definitive in May of 2020. But how much emission reductions do you expect to see as a result of any potential implementation?
I think that's still to be worked out in terms of what we can get with the stringency of the rule. We're still crafting what that could look like. But definitely, trucks are a very significant component of the emissions that we see in our area, and certainly the trucks of the warehouses are a big slice of that. But we still have to go through the rule process and see what level of stringency we can achieve.
Okay, and so the point system hasn't really been defined yet, and we don't have the conversion to convert the emission reductions to points, and then will the facilities get any of the SIP credits? There's just a lot of unknowns when I was reviewing this particular item, and I know that there's still some critical details to be let us know what they are to move forward on this program, because I think this is probably, out of all of the different items here, was the most confusing to me.
There's a lot to be worked out still. You're absolutely correct. We spent a lot of time thinking about different concepts and trying them out. This is one that we've settled on fairly recently, so that's why there's not a lot of details yet, but we're definitely working on that.
Okay, because depending on the kind of program that ends up being implemented with these potential rules, they can have significant impacts on the facilities and the warehouses. I don't know if they don't necessarily have complete control on the type of vehicles and emission standards and such that come into the warehouse area. And so we don't want to hamper the progress with regard to the vehicles coming in or not coming in just because of the credit situation and they get penalized. These are warehouses where we have a great deal of goods movement going on to the ports and to other areas across the United States. So this is something that I think we'll be watching very carefully.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And one of the reasons why it's taken us a while to get to this concept is we've been working very hard to better understand the business models associated with warehouses. And as we've developed our understanding on that, recognizing that the diversity of models, that many of the facilities, they don't own their fleets, they have limited control over their fleets. And so coming up with an option that has a menu menu and different options associated with that menu seemed a better way to go to accommodate those different business models.
Okay, well, I look forward to getting more information on this plan. Thank you.
Great.
Mr.
In
Chair,
keeping, yes, Mayor Mitchell or Councilwoman Mitchell or whatever you are.
I'm the
Title
mayor
is at the moment.
today.
Okay,
I had a question on the warehouse ISR. You're developing this point system, but the presentation didn't take it the next step, which is what do you do with the points and how does the whole thing work together? I think there was going to be fees imposed somewhere in there. And then the mitigation fees could be going into a fund that would provide incentive monies. But could you explain that a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, so one of the concerns with incentive funds is that if we have a regulation in place, some folks are concerned that that might, if they have a regulatory obligation to meet, that might then preclude them from being able to apply for incentive programs, because most of our incentive programs, they don't let you apply to them if you already have another regulatory obligation. So that is an issue that we've raised and we've talked through with the working group yesterday. We're still thinking through how that could apply, but it is something we're very cognizant of, and we know that's really important to the industry. We don't want to have the adverse consequence of, inhibiting turnover for the fleet. So we recognize that that's very important.
I also want to mention that it was announced, I guess, yesterday or today that Amazon is going to buy 100,000
I was going to point
delivery
this out.
trucks. And the producer of those trucks is a company called Rivian. 10,000 are to be in play very soon, and I think the 100,000 by 2030. So there's hope out there that people are going to voluntarily step forward. At least Amazon is going to, and that may spur some action by the other companies.
And we see a lot of movement and a rapid advancement in technology for the trucks, and we're certainly seeing that in China these days. So I think there'll be a lot of change over the next few years. Okay, besides back there?
when you say you see it in China a lot, you mean you see it in the area that you visited. China's an immense country, so you don't really know if in fact it's a national program or not.
So it's a fair point.
Yeah. So if a person who owns a business buys an electric or a clean vehicle and wants to get points, it seems to me there's less of incentive to do that if I'm not near a sensitive receptor, since I get less points.
So we're still considering that concept. I mean, it's one of the items that's been raised to us by stakeholders. Something they're interested in is having this weighting if you're close to a sensitive receptor. We haven't settled on what that looks like or whether we're going to proceed with that, but it's one of the things that we're considering at this point.
Are you also talking to future developments of warehousing? Because it's like Supervisor Bartlett says, those who are established have very little control over the vehicles that come in. But if you're working with those that are being proposed to be built, you can regulate it and encourage them in an aggressive manner to have cleaner vehicles come in.
That's
Are we
fair,
reaching
yes.
out to those? Can I please get a list of the new developments for warehousing that you're reaching out to? I'd like to speak to some of them myself, see what their reaction is.
We can provide that.
Oh, okay. Have you? Is that the conclusion of your presentation? or do you
I'm going to
have
talk about rail
questions?
yards.
Okay.
I have some warehouse questions.
Okay.
Oh, okay. We have our supervisor, Rutherford, who would like a warehouse question.
I have a bunch of warehouse questions. We had talked about doing an economic study on the impact of this particular regulation. Where are we with that?
Yeah, so we are conducting that economic study. We still we need to get the results of that in, but that is something that we were directed to do as part of this, and so we still need to look at those results and process those.
When do we expect that?
Yeah, it's probably another couple of months.
I understand there was a long meeting yesterday in the working group. Could you make available to us the slides from that? I understand they were very informative.
Absolutely.
And just to be clear, to distinguish, your previous item was on new construction. And in the discussion of this, you're talking about applying these rules to existing warehouses as well as new construction.
So that is one of the items we're considering is kind of the scope of the rule, but I think right now we would consider that this rule would apply to existing warehouses as well as newly built warehouses.
That's just going to be incredibly fraught. And to also consider then, how long do the credits apply? I mean, if someone is in one location and they get some credits or points and then they move, how long do those points last? When do they move with?
There are a lot of details. That is actually something that we talked about in our working group yesterday. We haven't settled on answers on that, but these are, we're in the mode of identifying issues that we need to be able to resolve in the rulemaking.
And the other thing I'm interested about, in our county, we have a point system right now for a whole bunch of environmental incentives. So if we as the land authority are requiring them to choose from a menu and do certain things, do they get credit for those things with you, or you would require a whole different set?
Again, I think that's something we need to look through as we go through the rulemaking process. Right now, we're at very preliminary conceptual stage where there's a lot of details we have to flesh out.
And you think we're going to get it fleshed out by May, huh?
We're very industrious.
Apparently, as long as you're not industrious in a warehouse, you're okay.
Are there any other questions before we move on to the rail presentation? Okay, Sarah, then we'll go on to the rail presentation.
Great. So let me put the slides back up on rail. So we've been working, it's again a bit of a slower schedule on rail yards. We've been spending some time to work with the different rail yards. We've visited their facilities to better understand, what's going on, what their businesses are. One thing that we have gotten is that they've provided us updated emission inventories for the 5 rail yards that are in our district. Which is important because we hadn't really had an update in over 10 years. And so being able to update that emission inventory for diesel particulate matter, as well as to get an inventory on NOx, is very important so that we can better understand the different source categories of emissions and where there may be some opportunities. From this emission inventory that we received, and we're still going over it to better understand it, but it does look like there have been substantial reductions in diesel particulate matter over the last 12 years. These are coming mostly from the non-locomotive sources. So we're still reviewing this analysis and seeing what it looks like. But I have some charts here just to give you an idea of and this is for diesel particulate matter. Again, this is a self-reported emission inventory, so we're still evaluating it, but it shows that there's some fairly substantial emission reductions that have been achieved at the different rail yards over the last 12 years. So in terms of next steps that we're looking at, again, still trying to figure out this emission inventory and what we think of it. We are planning a joint workshop with CARB in the community to discuss different rail strategies and how CARB and our district can work together to develop something. We are targeting to have come back to the board by the end of 2020 with a rule for rail yards. One concept is that we may be using some of the same approaches that I've just discussed for warehouses. They could also be applicable to rail yards as well, and so that is something that we're thinking about. So just a summary of what we have upcoming on airports. We are hoping to be able to come back to the board in December with MOUs for that. With the ports, once the ports adopt their truck rates, which we believe will be happening in November, we'll be coming back to the board in early 2020 for consideration of an MOU. On new and redevelopment, we're releasing our RFP coming up in October, and then we hope to proceed then with our working group process on different regulatory concepts. With warehouses coming back to the board in May of 2020, and for rail, we'll be coming back in December. And with that, if there are any extra questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Hi, Dr. Burke, this is Jill Wynett. I just want to let you know, so far we have 7 requests to speak cards on this item. And so if anybody.
And we have one here.
And if anybody else wants to speak, if you could please fill out a blue card and hand it to this nice lady here, we'll put you in our queue. Thank you.
And I'm sure Supervisor Perez has a couple where he's at. Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Super.
They're right here. They just joined me about 10 minutes ago. And we welcome everybody. We
Yes,
welcome
we
everybody.
So,
I think they got, I think you want to say something as well? We'll line them up as well because they also want to say something, I think.
okay, great. We'll get back to you and let them speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at CC8.
Okay, so we have first speaker is Alice Weschelberger. Alex? And if you're in one of the overflow rooms, CC6, can you make your way back if you have submitted a card? And then after that will be Angela Guzman. And how much time would you like to give them, Dr. Burke? I think you're on mute.
Give them 3 minutes. This
3
is an
minutes,
important
okay.
issue. I'll speak.
Talk here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. Ground level ozone is a catastrophic public health risk with the egregious ability to contribute to many physical ailments such as asthma, elevated rates of infant mortality, and low birth weight, but can also monumentally increase the possibility of contracting Alzheimer's. A 2017 study by USC titled Particulate Air Pollutants, APOE Alleles, and Their Contributions to Cognitive Impairment in Older Women and to Amyloidogenesis Experimental Models provided evidence that exposure to diesel soot and other variations of fine particle air pollution was revealed to correlate with an increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. Health data was collected from 3,647 women ranging from 65 to 79 years of age. Were collected in 48 states between 1990 and 2010. The results were horrifying. Elderly women living in areas of the U.S. where fine particle air pollution exceeded federal health standards were twice as likely to develop these diseases, with a 263% increase for women already facing a genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's. If these findings are in any way indicative of the general population, then air pollution has the possibility of being liable for about 21% of dementia cases in the U.S. The next part of the study involved examining the brains of female mice already carrying the Alzheimer's-associated genes after being exposed to controlled amounts of fine particle air pollution for a duration of 15 weeks. The exposed mice were 60% more likely to have amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease in their brains than those not exposed. I just wanted to conclude real quick with a statute, actually. The Lewis Presley Air Quality Management Act, Section 40402, subsection B states that the South Coast Air Basin is acknowledged to have critical air pollution problems caused by the operation of millions of motor vehicles in the basin, stationary sources of pollution, frequent atmospheric inversions that trap aerial contaminants, and the large amount of sunshine that transforms vehicle and non-vehicular emissions into a variety of deleterious chemicals. It's codified into our law that our air pollution in this area is complete garbage. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Please really just take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your testimony. You hit on a point which I've been thinking about myself for about a year and a half. We have a brain and lung institute that we encourage that's discovered air pollution damages in all kind of organs, including the transfer to babies in the fetus. So I've been looking for or waiting for an appropriate time to discuss with my colleagues about the expansion of that uh, uh, organization to include Alzheimer, because all these studies that are coming out from everywhere, all over the world, that says that air pollution is definitely a cause of dementia. So we are fortunate enough to have one of the top people in the United States of America, been on the cover of Time magazine twice, a doctor who is who's involved with it. So what you said this morning is very cogent. And I'm glad you brought that forward, because my colleagues need to be made aware of this and sensitized to this issue. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So Angela Guzman, and then after her will be Diana Contreras. Angela, in the room? Come on up. Hi. Hi.
Is this the mic?
Yes, just go ahead and
Okay.
speak normally.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Angela Guzman. I'm the co-president of Students for Environmental Action, a student organization at the University of Redlands. We are actually organizing the climate strike at a city scale today at 3 p.m. in the city of Redlands. At this event, we are speaking on the IE's poor air quality, and I think poor is an understatement. At this event, because it is more than, so at this event, we are speaking on the IE's poor air quality. Because it is more than known, it is felt by everyone. Students coming from out of state and different cities telling me how much worse it feels to breathe here. I live in a home with other students who grew up in the IE. We all own inhalers. We grew up in underserved communities. Our communities are getting sicker and no one is getting richer. Hear me when I say we cannot afford near zero carbon emissions. And we have been waiting and nothing has been changing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next.
Diana Contreras, and then after her will be Angie Balderas.
Members of the board, my name is Diana Contreras, and today I'm here to speak about the potential increase of poor quality in the city of San Marino because of the Eastgate development. On August 8, 2019, the Federal Aviation Administration held their community hearing for the expansion of the Eastgate project at the San Marino International Airport. During the presentation for the draft of the environmental assessment draft of general conformity determination for the Eastgate Air Cargo Facility, the FAA stated that the AQMD stated that the proposed project will confirm with the Air Quality Management Plan (AQMP) and the emission of ozone persecutors within the AQMD budget and dispersion modeling of CO and N2 demonstrated no exceedance of the federal standard. The reality is that Eastgate is not conforming with the air standards because this summer we had 85 unhealthy days. The Eastgate project is an example of how the industry continues to grow and our communities continue to suffer. It's the end of summer, and this is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angie Balderas.
Before you start your testimony, Sarah, you see what she said is indicative of what you're working on, and my daughter, one of my kids, lives by LAX, and I know that, and so does my granddaughter. So I'm sensitive to those emissions, and that airport is growing like topsy. And I just don't. I'm involved with this district every single day, 7 days a week for 27 years. Okay. And I don't get the feel that we have, engaged with them to the degree that we need to. So since I'm now here in Mobile Source, I'm going to be really pushing for that. So I just want to make you sensitized to that. I'm sorry, sir, your testimony?
Okay. Good morning. My name is Angie Balderas. I'm an organizer with the Sierra Club and a resident of the Inland Region for over 25 years. I lived in the cities of Bloomington, San Bernardino, and now Highland. I'm here to support zero-emission trucks and other zero-emission vehicles at the ports. airports, rail yards, and warehouses. We need to do something about our poor air quality because it is very important and vital to our communities that are living around in communities that are infested by warehouses, which brings many mobile polluters. I see many of our folks dying every day from respiratory issues. And quite frank, I'm sick and tired myself of spending my damn summers at Kaiser due to my developing breathing issues. I live in the best part of Highland. I bought a new house there just to be in between airports and surrounded now by warehouses all around me. And now trucks idling in our residential streets. Our communities are tired and just simply trying to breathe. We don't need none of your Band-Aid solutions. We need strong solutions and a strong ISR and MOUs. I please ask y'all, stop selling out our lungs for profits. And please help us out and help us help our communities. And if you would ever like to take a month to see what reality is in these communities, feel free. I have an extra room. I know other people will take you in, so that way you could see and experience what it is to breathe in the IE. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Linda Cleveland, followed by Francis Yang. Ms. Cleveland, here.
Good morning, board. My name is Linda Cleveland. I work with the environmental group from the Watts area called Watts Clean Air and Energy Committee, and I'm here to represent the whole South LA. We are surrounded by 4 different freeways. We have tremendous amount of construction going on right now, so there's pollution being spewed out all over our community. When the laws and the regulations are passed, it seems as though we're left out of that whole scenario. There's no enforcement going on. You talk about zero emission. What does that mean to my neighborhood? Nothing, because there's no enforcement. We have people who are able to buy all these credits and continue to pollute our area, and there's nothing being done about it. Right now, we have major companies there working on major developments, and still the pollution is there. So we're surrounded by the trains. We call them bomb trains because they flow through our community with all these chemicals on it. We found out that even our fire department is not equipped to handle a spillage in our area. So when all these decisions are made, please keep us in mind. We are worth it. We deserve to be able to breathe clean air like any other community. Thank you for your time.
In keeping with your testimony, I lived in that community for 35 years, and I still have family who are located in South Central Los Angeles. The move by this district to provide enforcement and programs to help all disadvantaged communities has been significantly increased in the last 27, 28 years. It's not perfect, but it's come a long way. I remember one of my best friends is Danny Bakewell, who is the publisher of the Los Angeles Sentinel. And I remember when Danny went out and stood in the middle of the train tracks over there by Slauson and refused to let the trains by because there were children playing in the playground up the street. So I've been involved in this struggle for a long, long time, and I probably believe that I will be in it until I'm done in this life. So I hear what you're saying, but you're not forgotten, and I must say that my colleagues, for the most part, are moving in a way which benefit the community.
I thank you and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
The next speaker is
Next person, Tessa.
Francis Yang, and be followed by Carlo de la Cruz.
Hi, thanks for having me speak. My name is Francis. I'm an organizer with the Sierra Club, and I grew up in Southern California, specifically in the Long Beach area. And these issues are really, really close to me, and a lot of the people that I talk to, hung out with, grown up with, and still continue to work with today. And unfortunately, a lot of them are unable to come all the way out to Diamond Bar at 9 a.m. in the morning, not only because they are working people, but also because a lot of them deal with health issues. In fact, one of the people that I come to represent, but will distance myself from telling her own story, she's not allowed to really come outside during these times, especially on the 85th day of unhealthy air. And when we read those weather reports that says unhealthy air for sensitive groups, I think that's an understatement. She's not allowed to go outside. A lot of us go out to the clean truck programs around the ports. A lot of us try to show up to the master plan things, but it's hard. It takes a toll on us, and not only that, it doesn't feel like anything's really happening. And when we're asking for regulations on these massive industries, we're not saying that just so that we can have healthy air and like it's beautiful, but we're really asking for health. We're asking for the ability to just go outside as regular people to do what we want. And it's really scary, especially when we have to come out all the way to Diamond Bar, when we have to mobilize, when we have to almost campaign just for something as basic as clean air in our communities. And so I guess I am here especially because I'm asking you to not listen when there are economic developments or nuances that don't make any sense to us. And all we're really asking for is just to take care of us as a government, as a body, as a people who care for other people. And so I guess I can just close by saying thank you again for your time. We are really, really trying to be careful and work as closely as we can with this group, and we're always happy to come out to any meetings, but please be wary that not all of us can be here. So when I say like I am trying to represent a lot of other people who can't make it, who don't have the time, I really mean that we care, and please keep us dear to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. After Carlo de la Cruz will be Peter Herzog.
So good morning, Chair Burke and members of the Mold Source Committee and everyone here today in lovely CCA in Diamond Bar. I want to thank the AQMD for not only having an important update on this issue, it's an important rule, but also having it on today. Today is September 20th, 2019. It will be the largest climate strike in the history that we've seen since we've known about climate change. About all the issues that we are dealing with fossil fuels. And so I represent the Sierra Club. We, along with our environmental justice and our environmental partners, will be submitting a letter with our comments, so don't worry. You will be getting our thoughts on the proposal. I want to thank staff for their diligent hard work and for also taking our feedback. We have seen progress as we've seen this rule develop, so we do feel that the AQMD is listening and is working diligently. That said, you are only one agency, and we know that you cannot lift the world, and we are here to stand with you because this is a larger issue than any one district, than any one elected official, and any one elected term. I've been reading the history about the AQMD, and it's astonishing to me about how history repeats itself. I want to implore you all today to think about how this can't just be another rule, that you have incremental change, that you really need to take this opportunity to realize this is the first time this district will have the ability to regulate and standardize the regulations for an entire industry across the Southland, an industry that has been proliferating and expanding since World War II, since the end of the big manufacturing boom we've seen in Southern California, and had devastating consequences. I say that because imagine if, and now I want to speak directly to the chair, to Supervisor Bartlett, to Mary, to Mayor Judith Mitchell, to Supervisor Perez, to Supervisor Rutherford. I want to thank you for your engagement in the community. But imagine if your predecessors who sat on this board 10 years ago, 50 years ago, had the information you had today, to know that all we needed was a few pushes to push the market to find better solutions that didn't harm health as well as harm community while also trying to provide productivity for the economy. We need to find better solutions, and we need to stop accepting half measures. Every single speaker you heard today will be spending their afternoon participating in the climate strike, putting their lives on the line yet again, because this is not an issue that they simply show up for and then get paid for and then disappear. This is an issue they do not get paid for. They are all volunteers. I volunteer many, many hours at AQMD meetings, and this is the issue that I care about most, because I know that it will be the issue that once you look back and you can see thousands of zero-emission trucks on the road, thousands of zero-emission vehicles at the ports, you know you've made a difference. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your hard work, and we'll be continuing to engage in this issue. So I want to encourage you to listen to all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
After Peter Herzog is Michael Munoz.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Peter Herzog. I'm with NAIOP, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. It's a pleasure to be here with you today again for another update on ISRs. As you know, this is actually a discussion that's been going on for close to 5 years now. Started back when we were looking at the AQMD and there were some initial conversations thereafter. And now we are looking at sort of a new concept that came out last month, and we're happy to be part of that discussion. I certainly appreciated staff's comments, particularly the notification and comments that we're at a very preliminary stage after all these years, and everybody will continue to work on it. You know, I think it's important to note, and I certainly appreciate everyone's comments, that after all this time, we still do not have, any information as to how much emissions might be reduced, how this could cause any kind of truck emissions decreases, how this, in the discussions over the years, there's always been a lot of discussion about SIP credit. There's still nothing with regards to SIP credit as to whether or not this could possibly lead to any kind of SIP credit. And then there's other issues as well. So as staff indicated, we had a good meeting yesterday. But the bottom line kind of from that meeting is that this is becoming very complex. There are a lot of questions to be discussed, issues to analyze. And so we look forward to that discussion and hope that we can proceed on a realistic basis. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, next speaker is Michael Munoz, please, and then Chris Shimoda. And that's the last speaker card I have here for CCA.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Munoz. I'm the senior researcher with the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, and I've been working on the Our People, Our Ports campaign. And I've heard a couple of comments today where people said warehouses don't know who's actually coming into their yards to either drop off or pick up containers. But I think that's specifically why we need a strong warehouse rule, why we need a strong indirect source rule, because you don't know who's coming into your yards or into these warehouses. And specifically, I wanted to mention Next Trucking, who on a recent webinar, Freightways, their chief financial officer basically laid out part of their plan, which is they will have a fleet of clean trucks that will pick up containers, take it to their yard in West Long Beach, and they actually said trucks that are now no longer allowed into the ports because they don't meet the requirements of the Clean Truck Program would then be able to pick up those containers and take them to their final destination. And to me, that sounds like an end around. It sounds like it undermines the goals of the Clean Truck Program. It undermines the goals of the AQMD. And I think that's specifically why we need a strong ISR. And we also need strong enforcement to ensure that every actor in the goods movement industry abides by all environmental and employment laws. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
And then Chris Shimoda.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Chris Shimoda, California Trucking Association. And first, just wanted to thank staff for sticking out a very detailed 3-hour work group yesterday on the warehouse ISR. We dove way into the weeds and under the weeds yesterday. So as Sarah mentioned, I think there are a lot of questions left to be answered, a lot of details left to hash out. I just wanted to highlight one that's already been discussed today, but it was a very important point for us, that we were told that there's a possibility that a warehouse ISR may prevent or deter fleets from accessing grants and incentives. And, in speaking with the leading fleets, the folks who all of us collectively are depending on to make the investments to advance this technology, I can tell you that all of them are looking to see what sort of grants and incentives are there to help defray the costs and the investments in zero emission to make them pencil out. And so just wanted folks on the committee to consider the unintended consequences of if this rule prevents fleets from accessing those incentives. Consider a project directly outside of the basin. Fleet is going to be able to access grants and incentives to defray upfront costs of zero emission vehicles, chargers, if there's on-site demand management or battery storage. All of that is potentially able to be, the cost of it is able to be defrayed by grants and incentives. Now look at the same project inside the basin, potentially no grants and incentives, and we didn't get into it today before the Mobile Source Committee, but there's a menu of options potentially for compliance that you may end up looking at a situation where a fleet doing a full zero emission conversion is also being required to pay mitigation fees to the district that are then being shipped out to their competitors. And so as far as the attractiveness of doing the exact kind of projects that I think the district, the stakeholders, the community members are asking to be done, whether or not this rule is going to have the intended consequence of trying to get those emission reductions in the basin. So again, there's going to be lots of discussions moving forward, a lot of questions on the concept, but just wanted to highlight the possibility that, the question should be, are we actually achieving the intended goal, which is to advance the technology? And we'll stay engaged in this discussion. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
So Dr. Burke, we can go to the remote location
That was
testimony. That's it for
That's
CCA.
it? Okay. Well, we have Adrian Martinez here, who will be testifying from the Lux. Adrian?
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to thank staff. I think it's been a long road to get to this proposal, but I think staff has done an excellent job digesting a lot of information, listening to what community groups and environmental groups have to say. In 2004, when I was at the Natural Resources Defense Council, we spent a lot of time working on the No Net Increase Task Force. We spent late nights, many months, working with Air District staff. And there was a reason. There was an urgency and crisis around port pollution that was even more prevalent then than it is today. I think this issue of warehouse pollution is equally important. And I know it seems like the 7 months between now and May is a short time period to get a rule done. But I think it's ample time. And I just want to give a commitment from the environmental community and others that, look, we'll work nights, weekends, holidays. Warehouse pollution, I think, is one of the critical issues in our air quality challenge that we're facing. And I think this rule, as it can advance clean technology and address existing and new warehouses, it's one of the most important rules that the Air District's working on. So I just want to put an urgency that I know that the proposal here shifts the date to May. And while that stresses us out because we've been working on this for a long time and we want it to be done quickly, we want to make sure that this gets done by May. It will be important that before next summer starts in earnest and the ozone season starts, we have a rule in the books that we can look to that all of us work together to accomplish. And so I commit to you that Earth Justice and my colleagues, we're ready to go, ready to provide that feedback on whatever deadline is necessary to meet this May deadline. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Adrian. We're going to go down to Palm Desert now and Supervisor Perez.
Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Andrea Vidaurre. I'm with the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice. First off, I just want to thank the staff. I know that they're working incredibly hard. And although we are disappointed that the deadline is being moved forward because we know how urgent this situation is for us, we are optimistic that the staff will get it done in May and with all of our support. Just this summer, we're getting over 80 consecutive days of really bad air, right? And what Francis spoke to earlier about not being able to go outside, that's 100% real, right? We really do have community members that during these 80 days are being told, don't go outside, it's gonna be detrimental to your health, right? We have a mother in the San Bernardino airport communities who has a little boy. She doesn't drive, she walks her kid to school, and on these to school, daycares, etc. On these types of days, she can't take her son out longer than a couple minutes because her kid will get a nosebleed, right? And we're lucky that we have this mobile health clinic, right? That drives through some of these overburdened areas in San Bernardino, and they'll give free checkups to the children, and they'll give free medication to the children. So we're lucky we have that. It goes to different places, but once a week at least, right? She's on that every single week to make sure that her kid has medications for the respiratory issues that he has and for the nosebleeds that he gets. So it's very real. And in San Bernardino County, Riverside County, ozone means a lot more, right? You feel ozone in a different way when you're on the front lines, when it's right behind your house, or when the truck route's right in front of your school. It's a whole other thing. So this rule is so pivotal to moving us forward, right? To having less days where we can have telling children that they can't be going outside. As you guys know, yesterday there was some pretty big news from the San Bernardino County, the region's largest private employer, Amazon, saying that they're going to be doing 100,000 electric vehicles, right? We're interested to see how many of those are going to be medium duty, heavy duty, right? But if we don't have a mechanism to be able to capture and require the industry to be putting those types of medium duty and heavy duty trucks into this region, where are they going to go, right? This type of indirect source rule can be that mechanism to be starting to capture the industry's transition into clean energy and clean technology. Without this rule, there's no way to capture that. And then without that rule, we can't really be reaching the equity that we're asking for here. This is just 5 seconds because I didn't see the timer. Today's a very special day. It's the global climate strike, right? It's a day where youth are asking adults to step up. Youth are asking, adults to not do business as usual, right, for their life. And what a special day that today we get to be talking about that type of rule, and we get to be actually acting on what youth are asking us to do, which is to make a rule that was going to implement in the future and help us out. So thank you.
You know, what I can't understand about the demonstration today is why the school districts in Southern California didn't give those students who wanted to participate an opportunity or a method by which they can do that instead of saying you have to stay in the classroom. You got all these millions of kids all over the world who are demonstrating, and in Southern California, where the problem's the worst, one of the worst places in the world, our kids are being told to stay in school and not demonstrate. It was just beyond me. I couldn't figure this out. But thank you for your
It's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us, so including them. Thank you.
Have I missed anybody? Oh,
Yes. I'd like to speak. My name is Yossi Kavazadeh, and I'm an organizer with the Sierra Club. I work in the inland region. I live in Riverside, and I want to thank you all for providing the space for us to come out and interact with you this way. And I'd also like to thank staff on their hard work in drafting these rules. I've been working on this rule since I was a volunteer with the Sierra Club back in 2014, advocating for a strong air quality management plan, learning about the health effects and the air quality impacts when I moved to the inland region and felt them for myself. And I've been fighting for clean air protections with my community and my youth, so it's really great to be here today. And I just want to emphasize that the timing of this is really important. And we were able to swallow this hard pill of the date being pushed back because we've seen substantial changes and reflections that are improving the pathway towards zero emissions. And we don't mean near zero gas and diesel, because near zero gas and diesel infrastructure investments and rewards will continue a path towards tailpipe emissions that our communities are used to seeing. We want to see green jobs. We want to see sustainable industry coming into our communities and providing a benefit. This rule has the potential to have the base, the community here that you see, benefit from an industry investment and an industry model that you are providing for the whole country. So there are still a lot of details, like I really want to echo and emphasize that haven't been hashed out. However, if we continue to work together, if we continue to have these dialogues, which AQMD staff is providing, we can. And yesterday's working group meeting took 3 hours. I was there. I usually don't attend those things. However, I felt like it was important to be able to pass on the information to our community. And there are a lot of interests that are scared because they've never had something like this shake their core values before. And the thing about fear I've learned is that that's where courage shows up. And I'm really going to emphasize that in times of fear, we have to act courageous. And what kind of legacy we want to keep, we want to build for our, not only our planet and the climate, but for our health out here in the inland region. Time after time, we see these big boxes being built up, whether it's Amazon or whether it's other corporations. And where are the community benefits? We just continue to see them being automated. And this industry is going to head towards that. So while we're figuring out how to reduce air emissions, which is great, that's also a pathway for new jobs to come in, because a lot of people are painting this rule as a job killer, as a tax to the industry, as a burden to our communities. And it's not that rule. It can be a tool to move our identity towards a market, towards a solution that can be community-based. And I just want to applaud everybody's role in putting that intention into place, especially the youth, especially the volunteers that have come time and time again every year. And most of our youth are planning today to figure out how to strike, because Chairman Burke, your point is on point. They're getting flack from their own teachers and their administrations and their schools for striking. So we're here today to really uplift and show you that this future is possible, and to really challenge you all where you're finding places of fear in yourselves to act on that fear with courage. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Would the other gentleman there like to speak?
I think we're good, Dr. Burke.
Okay.
I think you heard it all.
Thank you for the invitation yesterday.
I'm sorry?
Thank you for the invitation yesterday. My
Oh,
wife
my
was
pleasure.
excited about it.
My pleasure, Dr. Burke. And you heard it here. I appreciate the organizers coming out here, It reminds me of me 20 years ago. Sometimes we gotta like take some time to take a step back and recognize the fact that this is a good thing. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong at all. Okay, do we have any other testimony at any other locations? Mayor Mitchell, do you have anybody at your location?
None here.
I don't want you to take that personally.
But you know what? One of the gentlemen that was there was from Long Beach. And I want to mention that because the meeting was noticed here, we could have had people from Long Beach come here. It wouldn't have been such a long drive, and they're welcome to come to this location when the meeting is noticed here. I usually go out to Diamond Bar, but I've had a busy schedule this week, so I've noticed it here. And I believe the next time we meet, it's also going to be here at my city hall. So
Great.
just
Great.
for people to pay attention to where the meeting will be located.
Supervisor Rutherford, is there anybody at your location? No?
No, no one here.
Okay. So that concludes the testimony on this issue. We'll move on to item 2. And since we are over our time allotment here, we're moving into transportation. Carol, how long a presentation do you have here?
No, I can do it in 10 minutes.
How about 5?
Okay, 5. I can do it in 5. Okay, so.
Okay.
Dr. Burke?
Thank you very much.
Dr. Burke?
Because it was going to 0 in a minute. Okay.
Dr. Burke, just to let you know, stationary isn't until 10:30, so we still have a little bit of time.
5 minutes.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. For those of you who I haven't met yet, I'm Carol Gomez. I'm a planning and roles manager under Phil and Sarah. I'm going to give you an update on data for 2018 for Rule 2202. Some background on this rule. This applies to work sites of 250 or more employees at a site. We have about 1,360 sites that are regulated, and this rule targets VOC, NOx, and CO. There's 3 basic options for employers to choose for rule compliance. The top one, the Employee Commute Reduction Program, that's basically a rideshare program. The second one, the Air Quality Investment Program, that's one in which an employer would pay a fee for every employee who arrives in the 6 to 10 a.m. window, and then we use those funds for different projects. And then the last one, the Emission Reduction Strategies, employers purchase credits from credit vendors, and then we retire those credits so they can't be used anymore. For 2018, the pie chart on the left shows the percentage breakdown of the usage of these different options. So you can see the credits, the ERS, it's a little over half. The rideshare one is about 39%, with AQIP being about 6%. The pie chart on the right, though, shows the number of employees that are impacted by these different choices. So even though the rideshare one was about 39% of sites choosing that, it really encompasses about 52% of the employees that are being regulated. This is a breakdown of the different options that are being used, but by county. This pretty much more or less has stayed the same as last year. In any one box, it's changed anywhere from 0.1 to 3%, so pretty much the same. The County of Orange, through OCTA, has been working with my staff recently to gather data on all the employers in Orange County that are regulated and which option they're currently using, because they're planning to do a big push to try to get more of their employers to implement rideshare programs. This slide shows the peak window employees that are impacted over time. Again, peak window is 6 to 10 a.m. The very top in red, that shows all employees combined that have been in the program. The very bottom one's the AQIP. You can see that's always remained small. The 2 in the middle, the rideshare in green, and the yellow is the credits. That one goes back and forth because the credits, it's a credit market like the stock market. Prices go up and down, so that's driven by price. But for the last 3 or 4 years, there's been more doing, as far as employees go, the rideshare program. In this program, all the work sites are assigned an average vehicle ridership target, AVR, and it's based on their geographical location. The majority of the facilities are on a 1.5 AVR, with the outlying a 1.3 and downtown LA 1.75. So this just targets where we're at as far as reaching AVR goals. In the beginning, where you just see one line, back prior to 1995, all employers had to do a rideshare program. And then in 95, it was changed so that they were given options. So that top line refers to or incorporates all the different options, with the second one being the rideshare program, the ECRP. That blip that you see around the 2016 timeframe, it's not as dramatic as it looks on this slide. It's really only about a 0.05 AVR, so it's really small. But it does happen that during that time period, for whatever reason, employers were reporting more employees than prior or since. For emission reductions, again, we're targeting VOC, NOx, CO. It's showing the breakdown for tons a day for the different options. The very bottom that says target, that's referring to if every single plan was submitted to us met their AVR target, what they would achieve for emission reductions. But then if you notice the line above that, total achieved, we've surpassed all the targets. And the reason we've been able to do that and actually do that year after year is because the AQIP monies that we collect, it's given to TAO, and they've always done a really good job with funding programs that not only achieve the target, but always have exceeded the target. So we have a compliance component in this rule. So in 2018, there were 34 audits resulting in 14 notices to comply. The two notices of violation, one was for a plan that did not submit their credits, and the second was for a plan or a facility that just out and out didn't submit their plan. And we give them lots of opportunities. We're calling them and stuff, but they just didn't. Okay, so this rule, in addition to our original goal of reducing emissions, happens to have other benefits that have come along with it. So for the rideshare program, the ECRP, 100 facilities have adopted or implemented, I should say, EV charging stations. And it's also resulted in 270,000 annual reduced trips in 2018. That's a figure that the CTCs like. For the AQIP program, we've been able to, through TAO, to fund a number of different type projects. And then for the emission credits that are being used, a lot of them come from vehicle scrapping. So in 2018, 361 cars were scrapped. Going forward, we're working with our IM department on a program that currently, anyways, we're calling e-movers. And that will be for employers to be able to electronically submit their plans. Right now, we're still old school and everyone's submitting by paper, and then I have to have staff that are manually data entering all this stuff. So this is going to drastically cut back for us on the amount of data entry. And then for employers, it'll be much simpler for them to just be able to go online, fill out the information, and then push a button to send it to us. Also, we're going to be working on an online ETC, which is Employee Transportation Coordinator training course. Well, if you're doing the rideshare program, you're required to take this class. Currently, we hold the class twice a month, once here at our district or our facility right here, and then the other one is somewhere out in our region. So this is going to give them another alternative where they won't have to physically go somewhere for the class. They can do it at their leisure online. And lastly, going forward, this rule hasn't been amended since 2004. So there's a number of things we would like to look at to do with it. We're always looking to try to streamline, particularly the rideshare program portion, the ECRP. We're also looking at for the rideshare, let me back up a second. If you're doing AQIP where you pay a fee, or you're doing ERS where you pay a credit, you're required to meet a specific emission reduction target. If you're doing the rideshare program, you're not required to. You just have to try to make progress towards a specific goal. So we want to look with how to deal with that shortfall. So we have some ideas on that we want to bring forward to the community. Also, the AVR right now is based geographically, but we're considering an idea of changing that where instead we base the AVR to follow along major transit routes. This hasn't been updated in 15 years, so all the strategies that are listed in the program need to be reevaluated and updated. We also want to take a look at the fee structure. And this rule, as with any rule, will be forming a working group, seeing what their input is on these kind of ideas, and then getting any kind of other ideas they have, which for sure they will. We haven't opened this rule up in a long time, but every time we have in the past, we get a lot of participation. So with that, I'll answer any questions, and I think I did it in 10 minutes.
Questions? Do we have any questions? Thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
The next item would be Dr. Fine's item 3 and 4. These are just written reports that are to be filed, right?
That's correct, Dr. Burke.
Okay, then moving to item 5, is there any other business? Hearing none, is there any public comment there in CCA?
No, Dr. Burke.
Mayor Mitchell, do you have any public comment?
Not here.
Supervisor Bartlett, do you have any public comment?
Not here.
And Supervisor Rutherford?
No public comment.
Okay. And Supervisor Perez?
None at this time, other than everyone's invited to the Mariachi Gala on October 19th.
Hey,
Come on down to Palm Desert McCollum Theater.
I'm gonna try to be there. I really want to be there.
Come on down if you can.
So that, if with no public comment, that adjourns the mobile source meeting for September 20th, 2000.